ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋಣ. Introduction. Concept of philosophy. This is some of the things which are repeated from reality at dawn. So if somebody wants to look at reality at dawn, simultaneously cover it, you can do that also. Philosophy is not a subject based on reason, but intuition. Underline ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. Reason ಅಲ್ಲ, intuition. It starts not from doubt, as most of the Western philosophers hold, but from wonder. Generally, philosophers have attempted things before actually going into the life of practice, as is commonly the case with the Western philosophers. I may say that it is not certain that a philosopher being a philosopher cannot be corrupt or degraded, but there is no possibility of corruption if he had studied things by leading a practical life. So, underline the practical life. So, life of practicality is what is more important in spirituality. Sages in India have generally attempted philosophy by first going into the life of practicality. They have opened the secrets of existing things as far as they could do at their level of advancement. The outcome is that the six schools of different hues. We should always attempt the expression of the things when our practice or abhyas is over. Underline this. We should attempt the expression of the things when our practice is over. So what has happened is different sages practiced and then they reached different levels. They thought that their practice is now over, and from that level, they started expounding the truth. This is what has happened. That's why you have six different schools of philosophy in India. And Sahaj Marg is the seventh school of philosophy. And this is the seventh school that you are actually studying. So if somebody wants to study the other six schools, you are free to do so. No, I'm not happy to study with only one school. I want to study in multiple schools. Nowadays, youngsters want multiple experiences. So you can also study multiple philosophies. So, that's something that you can try. But the bottom line is this, that you should try to attempt the expression of things after your practice is over. That's the bottom line. Now, this is the key point for the philosopher to note in order to achieve the accuracy of things. So, when you try to expound a particular thing after your practice is over, it will be more accurate. Okay? India is the home of spirituality, and as such, the pursuit of the real has been active here in all ages. So, underline that India is the home of spirituality. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದ್ರೂ ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುಯಾಲಿಟಿಗೆ ಬಂದರೆ ಇಂಡಿಯಾಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. Spirituality is a science concerning the power which flows from the original repository and has the capacity in the form of knots both of creating and destroying. So he is writing what is spirituality. It is a science of what concerning the power which is flowing from the repository, which has the capacity to create and destroy things. So it's not kind of defined in any other place much about spirituality. So he's saying that it's a science. It's a science of the power flowing from the origin, which has both creative and destructive potential. The sages in India have used the power of creation for the reformation of humanity. The destructive power too is found in such abundance that even the atom bomb is nothing in comparison. The yogi uses these things according to the divine command and his willpower. Now underline that last two things. Yogi uses these powers according to the divine command and his willpower.
Divine command अर्थ आयतो, but what is willpower doing here?
Ponder about it. What happens to the yogi's willpower when they reach near the center?
It is same as center's willpower. Divine willpower.
Correct. So the divine willpower is there. and you have aligned with the divine willpower. That is what has happened. Here he is writing two things that the yogi can use is according to the divine command and his willpower. In other words, there are some discretion given to you at that level to use the powers in whichever way you want. There is some amount of discretion. We say that every minister, every president is within the bounds of the law. However, even at that level, they have some amount of discretion. At every level, in fact, at every level of our work, we have some amount of discretion. Even the person at the lowest rung of the work or the ladder, they can have some amount of discretion in the work that they are doing. Exactly same thing happens to the yogi. Even when they reach the highest, they have some amount of discretion in terms of how to use their willpower. Now here it says his willpower. It's essentially divine willpower only. Because it's not his willpower. He's now aligned with the divine willpower. That's why I was asking yesterday, when is it that you actually gain control over nature? At what point you gain control over nature? ಏನು ಸೈಲೆಂಟ್ ಆಗೋದು ಸಾರಿ
13.
be more specific. Today we don't need sorry
Colors.
colors. When do you gain control over nature? That is the question. You are talking about in terms of specific points. I'm not talking about that. At what level do we gain control over nature?
11th. 11th or 10th. 11th.
Even beyond that. Even beyond 13th.
When they enter the central region.
Not in the central region. Even beyond. What do you understand by nature? When we use the word nature, what does it comprise of?
The creation of the whole center. The show.
Correct. So from where to where is nature?
From the first to
You have to be specific. From the first, last, that is not going to be specific.
The first mind until first point.
Correct. The entire thing. From the
conscious
first, where is the first mind?
conscious mind.
What is the first mind?
Thoughts.
Sorry?
Thoughts.
You are looking at it from the individual mind. We are talking about it from the place where everything starts.
First mind itself is
First
nature.
one is the center.
What is the first mind? That's what I'm asking.
That is nature.
It starts from there.
The show.
Everything down from below is the part of nature.
From the show. Start of the
From the Kshobh. The Kshobh is the first mind of God. The first mind or the super mind of God. From there, it comes down, the whole thing. Down to the lowest point of creation. Everything is included in nature. So when do we gain control over nature? When we have crossed the Kshob in our return journey and get established in the latent motion in alignment with the center, at that level, we gain control over the nature. Is it clear? We use the nature in order to help get over the nature. You use a thorn to remove a thorn and then throw away both the thorns and be aram. So you use the nature to get over the nature and then gain control over the nature. So when we say that somebody is getting control over the nature, they should be in the latent motion or the infinite ocean in close approximation with the center. The nature is the center's machinery. This is called as the entire machinery of nature. From that first kshob, first mind, down to the lowest point. This is the entire machinery of nature. Power has its origin after the first show, not before. Remember that. Power comes into the picture only after the first show. What is there before show? There is no power. There is only latent motion. There is no power as such manifested. You can say there is a potentiality of the power in the latent motion, but there is no power itself as such. Does it make sense? So if you say that we are in control over the nature, we should have crossed the shore, established ourselves in the latent motion or the infinite ocean in close approximation with the center. These are the three things that should happen for a person to gain control over nature. Okay, any questions?
In our Rajamar, so everything works with Sankalpa Shakti, right? We also take a Sankalpa, even Master. But how this happens when one reaches there? At that time also does like Babaji he also takes Sankalpa.
Sankalpa is, what is Sankalpa?
We are taking a thought that
Thought. Sankalpa is nothing but thought. Sankalpa Shakti means thought power. We explained to you what is the relationship between willpower and thought power. What's the relationship between willpower and thought power?
by our will we take thought.
We have spoken about it in one of the sessions. The relationship between willpower and thought power.
Willpower is coming from soul,
Correct. Thought power is coming from?
mind, conscious mind.
Thought power is something related to the mind. Willpower is something related to the soul. So when we go back in our journey, initially when we are at the level of the mind, we can only use the willpower and the thought power because we are not in close approximation with the soul. So at our level, anybody who's in the Pinda Pradesh, they uses the thought power. That is the Sankalpa Shakti. As you go higher and higher, you become more and more closer to the willpower. Then you start utilizing the will. Then you go further beyond the level of the soul. That willpower of the soul now becomes aligned with the divine will. Then what happens? You are established in the center, near the center, with that divine will. That is what happens. So 3 levels. In other words, as we progress in spirituality, what we make use of in terms of giving the sittings and doing the work will keep changing. Initially, it will be the Sankalpa Shakti, then it will be the Ichha Shakti, and then it will be ultimately the Daivi Ichhe. In Kannada we say, ಎಲ್ಲ ದೇವ್ರ ಇಚ್ಛೆ ಇದ್ದಂಗೆ ಆಗಲಿ. ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾ? ದೇವರ ಇಚ್ಛೆ ಇದ್ದಂಗೆ ಆಗಲಿ ಅಂತ ಯಾವಾಗ ನಾವು ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ವೆನ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ನಿಯರ್ ದ ಸೆಂಟರ್. Otherwise, every other thing that we have got, we are using something else, which is not necessarily directly related to the Daivi Ichhe or the divine will. Does it make sense? So there are 3 levels. At the lowest level is the thought power. That's what we use because we are at the lowest level. But as we progress higher, we can use the will, our own willpower. Now, our own willpower at the level of the soul is a derivative of the divine will. But then, as you go beyond the level of the soul or the true identity, our willpower now merges or becomes one with the divine will. And then, when we enter near the center, we get established in that divine will. That is what happens. That is why, when you take a sitting, it does make a difference with whom you are taking the sitting. Because each one has a different capability of utilizing the will. The master's power is the same, but how it is utilized is different. Does it make sense? So, to the extent the perceptor can actually progress, to that extent they also become effective in terms of the settings. Of course, if you just look at teacher's work, the more a teacher learns, it is assumed that they will be better positioned to teach. But not necessarily. There could be a teacher who is very well learned, but they might not have the ability to express it correctly, put forward correctly. They might be very well learned, but they are not able to put forward correctly. Likewise, a perceptor can actually be very well versed. However, if they do not learn how to utilize their Sankalpa Shakti or the Ichha Shakti, their ability to do the work to that extent will be hindered. Okay, so that is one of the reasons why there are variations, subtle variations in the sittings that you take from different people. It's not the same all the time. Even with the same person, it will be different each time because of the fact that we go in a different state each time, they are in a different state each time. Ganesh, you want to ask something?
Right. So commonly, when we go for a sitting, the preceptor says it is the masters who is working, it's not the preceptor. This is a common statement across everywhere. And the second, when I inquired about, like we discussed this previously also about this topic, it depends upon the preceptor also how to use. Then the other answer I got it depends upon their individual practice, how effective they are good in practice. But I agree to your point, what you are saying. It also depends on the preceptor more, which is the right one here. And ultimately, when so for example, if we are giving a sitting, we pray to master, whatever we come across BSc, we pray to the master, this is what I observed, please do the needful. So what different they are going to do?
What different? That means?
The Sankalpa Shakti of individual preceptor, like as per my understanding, I pray to master. If I see something in a BSc, I pray to the master, this is what I observed. Like once you become a preceptor, what is the different Sankalpa Shakti you'll be using it?
That we'll discuss once you become a preceptor. You answered the question. But at this level, just remember these three things. There is something called as Sankalpa Shakti, there is something called as the Ichha Shakti, and there is something called as the Divine Will or the Daivi Ichha, Divine Will. So, depending on how well we actually progress, obviously, progress depends on our own sadhana, our own grasp and understanding, and our own ability to feel for finer things. Depending on all these things, a perceptor can actually work at different levels. Okay, so just keep this in mind. We will discuss about this particular thing when we reach that state. After the preceptor training is over, after you have finished your exams. So don't get muddled up about all these things even at present. Okay? Because very few preceptors also actually scratch their head about these things. So not to worry about it, but practically we see that the experience is different. That's what our experience shows. So we need to take that into account.
Yeah, I also feel the same. Like there should be a difference, is what my feeling was.
There is always a difference. In fact, from perceptor to perceptor, there is always a difference in terms of the settings. Okay? So we classify it according to the perceptor factors and the Abhyasi factors. So there are multiple factors.
So here, preceptor is something like a doctor, like you need to say.
Preceptor is like many things. They are the conduit, they are the doctors, they are the psychologist. There are quite a few roles a preceptor plays. So it'd be interesting how much each preceptor can actually pick up as they grow. And there are many preceptors who believe blindly that, okay, everything is being done by the master, I don't need to do anything. I'll just say start and I'll say that's all. That's also something that many preceptors practice. So that's like saying that anyway, I have a driving instructor next to me. All that I have to do while driving is start the vehicle, and after that, once we reach the destination, stop the vehicle. That's it. I will never learn driving because the driving instructor is with me all the time. Now, if that is what is the situation, then what's the point of having a driving instructor? The driving instructor is there to teach you driving, not to substitute your driving. Right? So, a lot of people have this confusion. So, master is there all the time with you. If that is the case, are you supposed to drive or not? Are you supposed to pick up driving or not? Now, if you say that you are going to become like master, in other words, if he is like the driving instructor, we also need to learn to drive like him. That's what we are doing. Now, if during the sitting, all that I'm going to do is that I'm going to say start and then that's all. Where are we actually learning the driving? Can you see? So it's a lot of misunderstanding is there in this particular point. But more about it when we reach that shore. Okay, keep that in mind. But broadly classified, sitting experience depends on the Abhyasi factors and the perceptress factors. There are multiple factors which can have an impact on the experience of the sitting. Okay, and there are sometimes nature's factors also, hidden hand, which is working. So, for example, what kind of clothes we are wearing now? Is it something we actually chose by choice? Or it's just that whatever we could lay our hand on, we just picked it up and wore it? What happened? Did you think about it, decide, and then wear it? No, no, no. Oh, I have to look good in the class, teaching class. So in the pre-work session, I have to look good because there are a lot of other people also watching me outside this pre-work. So I should be selective in my clothes. Did anyone think about it? No, no. So then if you were to ask, is it your factor or is it nature's factor? Which factor is at work now?
Nature,
By default, go ahead.
nature's factor.
Nature's factor. By default, all the time in our life, it is nature's factor which is at work. We tend to override it with our individual likings and dislikings. It is the nature's factor at work all the time. But we tend to like or dislike it and override it. That's what happens. Nature's factor is simple. Obviously, you have to wear some clothes before you come to the pre-work. To that extent, it wants you to do something. That's it. It is not particular about this cloth or that cloth or anything. For the nature, everything is the same. All the clothes are the same. But for us, we have our individual liking and disliking. Oh, this color, this pattern, this logo. All these things are our likings. These are all human, man-made. Okay. So in general, what is at default is nature. We tend to come in on and off with our individual liking and disliking. Okay. If you don't do anything, nature will do its work. Because nature's job is to create the bhoga. You remember in one of the maxims we read about the field of the bhoga being created, and from there the samskaras actually come to the bhoga. You remember that in one of the sessions we discussed in detail. And that is the continuous work of nature all the time. And that is at default all the time. Okay. At least let us finish 2 pages. Otherwise, we are not going to finish the book even by December.
Sir, how do the master like Babuji Lala, how do they work like Master Srinath, they work on a basis? They work using their willpower or
No. We told you transmission occurs just by the presence of the master.
no, that is okay, but he says now Babuji does some over for a basis.
I just now told you, master's presence is the one which works. They don't even need to utilize their willpower or the will. Automatically it occurs. It is automatic. The work is automatic. What determines the work is the deservingness of the abhyasi. When the abhyasi becomes deserving, automatically the work occurs through the master. Just remember, master's work, that is written that in the heartfulness way, that master's work occur by presence. For example, sun's light come to us by presence. The sun doesn't do anything to send the light towards us. By its just presence, light is going everywhere at all times. Whether we benefit or not from the sunlight, it depends on how we actually cater to it. If we become deserving, we get the benefit of the sunlight. If we become deserving, our heart will say, go out and sit in the sunlight. Then you get the benefit of the sunlight. If you are not deserving, then you will confine yourself to the room. So the sun is still there, but we might not be able to get the benefit. Because here we are not in tune with utilizing what is already present. You remember the story from Argentina, from Heartfulness Way? Sun's assistant says, you have to shine on this fellow in Argentina. At the end of the day, he comes and says, you did not do your duty properly because you did not shine on this fellow in Argentina. Then the son says, my duty is to shine everyone, on everyone. But if this fellow locks himself in the room and covers all the screens, what can I do about it? So it's our job to make ourselves open to the possibilities. Okay. So master's presence work by it is the master's presence which works directly. For them, there is no need for utilizing the willpower also. It is just their presence that works. Okay. So at present too, this power is being utilized and a new world order is being created. A spiritual renaissance must necessarily take place, and India will again lead the world no matter how long a time it may take. Other countries have begun to realize that no nation can even survive without spirituality. The age of diplomacy and stratagem is now passing swiftly. By the end of this century, a great change is bound to take place. Everyone should gladly welcome what is destined to befall and should come to the path of spirituality whereby his welfare is promoted. I am revealing here this the greatest philosophy. People may grasp it or not in the beginning, but in due course of time, they will surely begin to realize it as such. So, history of Sahaj Marg. Great men are not accidentally born, they are born when the world wants for them, waits for them in eager expectation. Such is the phenomenon of nature. India, the home of spirituality, was groping in darkness and had totally forgotten the age-old system of yoga. Solid materialism had taken the place of fine spiritualism. Dark clouds of ignorance were hovering all around, and yogic transmission had become quite foreign to the Hindus. At this stage, when spirituality was tottering helplessly, some great personality was urgently needed to set things right for the upliftment of mankind. It was the auspicious day of Basant Panchami, the 2nd February 1873, on which the power of nature descended on earth in the human form of Samarth Guru Mahatma Sri Ramchandraji Maharaj of Fatehgarh in district Farrukhabad, UP. The happy days, so beautifully coordinated with the most pleasant season of the year, breathed into every heart the blooming freshness of the spring. The blissful time ushered in by his advent introduced a new era of spiritual awakening, which promises a practical solution to the human problem of existence. We are struck with the reverent joyful awe when we recall to our mind the great renaissance brought about by him in the spiritual field. He offers an easy solution to the problem of existence which has ever been confounded, even to the greatest of the sages. The divine personality was born in a respectable Kayastha family. His childhood was influenced by his mother. Kayastha does not belong to the four caste, although sometimes they include Kayastha in Kshatriyas. It does not belong to the four main groupings. So Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudra, and Vaishya. So these are the four main divisions. But Kayastha, although sometimes it is included under Kshatriya, they don't necessarily belong to the Kshatriya community. So it's a separate community altogether. There's more discussion on this particular point in 1944 Whispers. Vivekananda was also a Kayastha. Babuji was also Kayastha. Lalaji was also Kayastha. Just remember. His childhood was influenced by his mother, a noble-minded, simple lady who spent most of her time in devotion and worship. It was due to her influence that he received inspiration at a very early age. The incident goes that one day while he was playing with his mates, some divine force around him aroused in him the feeling that he had not come for the purpose he was engaged in. He had to realize himself and to equip himself for the greater task ahead. The soul was awakened and he set to it in the right earnest. He attained perfection in only 7 months. Underline. He attained perfection in only 7 months, really an unparalleled example. Since then, he devoted the whole of his life for the cause of spirituality. He is the Adi Guru of our mission. In Khana, when we attended the Krishna Janmashtami, they made an announcement that Krishna is the Adi Guru of our mission. In this worldly realm, Lalaji is the Adi Guru of our mission. From that divine realm, Krishna is the Adi Guru of our mission. But if somebody were to ask you, who is the Adi Guru of our mission, you need to ask them from which realm you tell me. Both are correct in their own ways. But in the examination, if they were to give you, for a preceptor exam, you have to write Lalaji as the Adi Guru of the mission. Okay. It's so confusing, no? Sometimes spirituality is so confusing. At every step, it is confusing. He was an embodiment of moderation, toleration, and devotion. With him dawned the new era of yogic training through transmission, of which he was the master. He showed a way to bring a man to perfection in one life only, and even while leading a family life in the Grihastha ashram. He used to say that troubles and miseries of Grihastha life are penances and sacrifices for spiritual attainment. He had simplified the method of spiritual training to a great extent and adjusted it to suit the requirements of our time. So, the troubles and the miseries of Grihastha ashram are penances and sacrifices for spiritual attainments. Underline that sentence. And he made it possible for a man to reach perfection in one life only. With a high caliber and a spiritual dignity, our great master at the Divine Light devoted every moment of his life to the upliftment of humanity. He was, in fact, nature's prodigy, and his work in the spiritual field is beyond common conception. His wonderful researches in this science have made human approach up to the highest limit in the least possible time quite possible and practicable. He introduced an improved system of Raja Yoga, which later came to be known as Sahaj Marg. After serving the masters for about 36 years, this spiritual genius left his material form at the age of 58 on the 14th of August 1931. The work he did during his lifetime is beyond conception. Posterity will know his merits in due course. Sri Ramchandra Mission was established in Shahjahanpur on 31st of March 1945 after the name of this grateful personality by me as his successor, though through his grace, and slowly it is attracting the seekers of the real from everywhere. I am happy that Master's grace is working in this aspect and people are attracted to benefit from his grace. The system of Sahajmarg Sadhana now followed in the mission presents an easy and a natural path for the attainment of the ultimate. This is what it is for, meant for, attainment of the ultimate. That is what we are actually striving for. Sahajmarg does not advise those cruder methods which are hardly practicable in routine life of man. Under the Sahajmarg system of spiritual training, the action of the senses is regulated in a natural way so as to bring them to their original state, just as it was when we assume the human form for the first time. Not only this, but the lower vrittis, which are working independently, are subjected to the control of the superconsciousness. Hence, this perverse action is stopped. The higher centers come under the charge of the divine centers, and in this way, the whole system begins to get divinized. So, there is a formula in our system. The lower centers are brought under the influence of the higher centers. The higher centers are brought under the influence of the divine centers. That is what we do. So when the lower centers are brought under the influence of the higher centers, the senses get purified. Now what happens to the senses when they get purified? They go back to the original state that they were in when we were born as a human being for the first time. At the time when the senses were not corrupted, when we were born as a first time as a human being. So when we bring the senses under the influence of the higher centers, they go back to that original state of purity. So now there are four: the senses, the lower centers, the higher centers, and the divine centers. Transmission is beyond all these things. So transmission makes the entire thing pure in due course of time. That's why we utilize the transmission. Okay. So we'll stop here and we continue the special features of Sajma tomorrow. Because that is an examination question for you. What are the special features of Sahaj Marg? Okay. Any questions?
Sir, I have one question, but not related to this. When the gods are shown, Krishna and all, they are shown in blue color. Why is that?
Very simple. As we go higher and higher, you know the Vibgaya, the seven chakras.
Yes, body all.
The seven chakras, we discussed about it in one session. The Mooladhara, the
Mola.
Swadhisthana, those chakras. So the fifth chakra, according to those yogic chakras, the fifth chakra is blue in color. Then the sixth chakra is indigo. The seventh chakra is violet. All are nothing but shades of blue. So blue is supposed to be considered as a spiritual color. So people who progress spiritually get attracted more and more to the blue. Now don't start wearing blue from tomorrow for every session. Okay, but generally blue and green colors. Green is the color of the heart. Of course, in our system, we say the fifth point is the green color. We don't talk about blue color in our system. But in the traditional yogic system, blue and green. Green is the Anahata chakra. Blue and indigo and violet. These are the three for the Vishuddha, Agna and Sahasradal chakra. So, in a way, when you start liking green color, you are at the level of Anahata. When you start liking blue color, you are now at least at the level of Vishuddha and then beyond. Then you light different shades of blue. Remember that. That's the reason why all gods are painted, especially Rama, Krishna, Vishnu, they're all painted blue. Even Shiva is painted blue. That indicates the spiritual aspect of their existence. That's all. The blue color indicates the spiritual aspect of their existence. Okay. So from tomorrow, keep a watch on Bharat, what he wears.
His background is green.
And he's also wearing a, what color are you wearing?
It's green.
Blue, you know. Is it green? So see, already you are wearing that. Already you are knocking on Anahata chakra. Open, open. And as you go higher and higher, no, at some point of time you like black color. And after a certain stage, there is also white color. When all the colors merge back into the origin, it merges and becomes white color, no? So at that time, you will only wear white color. You don't like any other color. That's what happens. So at different stages of our evolution, we actually like different colors. In other words, not only we like, we tend to kind of go towards it naturally. Because that is what our heart and mind's state make you to choose. And this will be relevant even after marriage also, Bharat. After marriage, you know what happens?